there are people that'll be 2 houses away from each other. And they're
still doing it online.
Yeah. I think a composer's job is to bring the audience into the world of the film or show. Or, I mean, like, if you're attracting too much attention to yourself, then you're probably not doing a good job.
Okay.
House of the Devil's Ty West.
Yes.
And so the first film that we did together was a film called The Roost, which was like vampire bats that just go and kill everybody. And
what's sort of like your go-to inspiration when you've got a new project coming in? Like, how would you approach starting that? Because it can seem like, to me, I'm like, oh wow, like that seems like an impossible task. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, and that will depend on when I come on. So if it's something that I know about and more, like as I've worked with people, then I'll usually know about a project ahead of time. So they might send me a script like before they shoot. Or I had one director tell me like, I'm thinking of writing a script. Can you write me a piece of music? So,
Right.
Which is great because we feel involved.
So they want to use you almost as the inspiration to help.
Well, he's just, that was like, he wanted to get a certain people involved, and so he had this idea of like, get them excited about this part of the thing. I have all these things I know I want to do. I want to use this person for this and this person for this. So I think it was just coming from there. But usually it's like they'll have a script before they shoot. That's pretty common that I'll just start writing. It's great for writing themes because the themes are the hardest stuff to do. And once you get those to work, I like to try to get them working in multiple different places. And then I know that it's got some legs and they're malleable, you know? And when I feel like that's happening, then that's great. You can use them a lot and you can rearrange them and do different things. And it's kind of, the ball's already rolling. But getting to that point takes time. It's not the same as like, usually it's not like, just 2 seconds
right.
And then so you can, it's kind of similar to in a film or a show, you could score a scene in a way that works fine for that scene. But then when you watch it in the totality of everything, then you realize like, oh, that doesn't work because X, Y, and Z. So the themes need to go and they need to be able to
flow.
Yeah, they need to be able to, just like sort of navigate the different turns. And
when you say like the theme has to work in like different ways, do you mean sort of like, I don't know, like you have like the hero theme and then like something tragic happens to that hero and it's like played in minor and it still works in minor or something like that?
Yeah, might be that. Yep. It might be, you might just have 5 seconds inside another cue where you need to just like hint
build
at the
it
theme.
up a bit, right?
And so you got to have, like, I find it's good to have different layers of this stuff. So when you need to hint at it, you can hint at it and get in and out quickly without smashing people over the head. Like, I think a composer's job is to bring the audience into the world of the, whatever it is, a film or a show and you usually want to do that without, I mean, like if you're attracting too much attention to yourself, then you're probably not doing a good job.
Okay.
If sometimes the music needs to be really in the fore and like really, really take over, and that's great. But sometimes it also needs to kind of sit back and support more.
Yeah,
and
just like a feeling like you don't actually, it's not noticeable. Because that's the thing, you see a lot of people, like, just regular people going and watching a film, you couldn't ever say like, oh, what was that? What was it? What instruments were in that score? They wouldn't know. Like,
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, it's there as a supporting act. But if you removed it or changed it, it totally changes the whole feeling. Right.
So, if I can start early, I'll try to, I kind of think of it in 2 different ways. There's that recurrent material, and then there's like what's the sound of the score,
Mm-hmm.
and that's more of a kind of a color thing,
Okay.
or a conceptual approach.
Mm-hmm. Will you tend to sort of build up a palette for like a sound palette for a specific project, as it were?
I start thinking about that, and then
Yeah.
if I know, like, if it's going to be primarily electronic
Mm-hmm.
and what type of electronic stuff it's going to be, then I'll start building that up. And it starts with thinking what you want to use specifically, and then within that, like, what you can do, and then the moods that you need to create. A lot of it's about creating the right mood. And then if you know that you're going to have, like, if it's a thriller or something, and you're going to have to create a lot of tension, some of that's probably going to need to be with, you have questions like, what does the pace need to be able to do? And then when do you need to be able to stretch things out and kind of build tension that way with more sustained stuff. So yeah, it might be electronic, it might be acoustic instruments or orchestral, and then within that, it's like, what kind of musical language do you want to use? And sometimes actually limiting yourself is like a great creative inspiration, where
it'd be a totally powerful thing.
Or just sort of limiting yourself, where you save something for a particular, like, arrival.
How would you go about limiting yourself?
So, I mean, it could be something as simple as, eliminating certain notes.
Right.
And then that will put you into certain types of harmonies and tonalities, right? And I mean, a great example is like Peter Gabriel is super, like he didn't use hi-hats and things like that for like his first, until So he was, like, really sparing with that kind of stuff. And he's a really good example of like, kind of holding back on, if you have too many choices, that can be a little bit daunting,
totally.
And once you start to make certain creative choices, then they inform the choices that come later. So then it starts to, like, organically move. Once something starts to click, I find that it's like a domino effect. It kind of takes you in a certain direction.
It must be quite a relief when it does click, because then you're on the right path. It must be. Is it kind of frustrating to get to that point?
It's like, it's harrowing. It's just like, because people want to hear stuff, and they want to know that, especially with directors, they, they're handing over a certain amount of control to the composer. And,
you totally, as I said, it can change the
totally
taste of the film.
I can't remember which director it was, but I remember reading a quote saying, like, it's actually a terrifying process to hand a film over to a composer, because after that it's never going to be the same. Once the music's on it, it won't be the same picture. It'll feel different. Everything will be different about it, because the music's so powerful.
And you got to be respectful of that, but you also have to figure out, like, what do they actually
want?
What are they're saying they want X, Y, and Z, but, like, what do they actually want? So, and sometimes some people are really conversant about music, and they're easy to they're able to talk about it easily, and there's not a lot of confusion. The communication's really direct. And then other times people can be really uncomfortable about it, or they think they're saying a particular thing, but then as you go, you find out, like, they're latching onto this word, but they really mean something.
Okay. They're saying they want it to sound on fire but underwater.
Yes.
So does the traditional spotting session still happen, as it were, where you sit down with the director and you go through the whole film, and the director will say, I want this here and that there and that feeling here, as in, or is it When I say traditional, is it more of a remote thing these days, or is it still the thing where you come together, you sit down together and watch the film, as it were?
Yes, spotting sessions do still occur in my experience. And they're usually done now post-COVID. It's online.
Okay.
It's there are people that'll be like 2 houses away from each other.
And they're still
doing it online.
Yeah. It's like,
how did we get to this world?
yeah. Everyone's in their bathrobes. And,
yeah, right.
Do you find that sort of like, because the emotion is so important and like understanding what the person, the director or whoever is trying to get out of it, do you not feel like it can be that removes some of it, or you find that the technology's got so great that you can bypass that now and it is like being in the same room almost?
For spotting in particular, with doing it online?
Yeah, like collaborating in any manner, really.
You know, it's interesting. I find once you've worked with someone, communication gets a whole lot easier, right? So if you're working with someone for the first time, then establishing that channel of communication as quickly as possible and as effectively as possible, it becomes really important. Sometimes being in the room can be really helpful with that.
Like picking up their energy sort of thing.
Yeah, and just kind of maybe like, I don't know if people's focus tends to be a little different or something, and the flow of the session might go differently.
Yeah.
But
because there's like body language that comes into it as well. Do you know how people are reacting to stuff?
Yeah, it's and it might be like a personal thing, but when you got a screen that's a little bigger, I do find that it's a little more. It pulls you in. To me, it pulls you in more. You know,
yeah,
like,
makes sense. Yeah, you're right. Doing it on a little phone.
Yeah,
Yes.
of course. It's like bigger speakers. You know.
Yeah, and then going now. I mean, I used to go to the movies like several times a week. 20 years ago, but now with kids, I definitely don't do that. And then after COVID and all that kind of stuff. But going to see a movie on the big screen is really
nothing like it.
Yeah,
it's brilliant,
and sound wise too.
Yeah.
Well, to me, that's like that's really now the only thing that draws me to the cinema is because I want the feeling of the sound. Like I want to feel it. Like, and because at home I've got a tiny room, but with a 55-inch TV, so I'm basically at the cinema. I have like a nice Kef surround sound, but the feeling is not the same. Yeah, it's like that. That's what it is. The TV's where the desk is 55 inches. It's stupid.
Is your eyesight okay?
No, I was wearing glasses. But that went ages ago. But the feeling of being in the room. I like my partner hates going to the cinema because I'm a little bit like Sheldon Cooper. I don't know if you've watched Big Bang Theory, where he's like trying to find the perfect like sweet spot for the thing. I'm like always like I've got to sit in that seat because that's where like the best acoustics are going to be. For me, it's like a massively important part of like doing it. So is that something that you prefer maybe when doing TV to film?
Which having
like being able to go to the cinema and like experience it, like rather than because obviously if you're doing a show for Netflix or something, it's not going to have that same.
Yeah, just when you're on the dub stage, then but and then it'll never sound as good again.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, I do like. Anything that's gonna get you that experience of being immersed in the thing, is really, I find is really helpful. As far as the spotting goes, to get back to your question before, you go through and you do it, so it is how it is. But I I think first and foremost, it is like how much experience you've had with someone or how communicative they are. You know, that's like super helpful. I find that you end up being like the last thing a composer wants to hear is, I'll tell you when I hear it, but that's not it. Because that's not,
yeah.
you know.
Very useful feedback.
But yeah, because let's just start over again, you know? And
That's fighting talk.
yeah. So I find that filmmakers who are more communicative and just kind of more comfortable and just kind of like jump in with that conversation and handing the reins over, it's not actually handing the reins over. It's just like it's more of a collaborative thing, you know? And I find that the feedback tends to be more like, oh, that's really great. Like Jim Mickle is the director I work with a lot, and he was the showrunner for Sweet Tooth. He's really, really great. He's like, that's really, really great. I love this, this, and this. And if you can just do like a little bit of this, like just kind of do this with it. And he's really good about that little 5-10% of feedback that just takes the thing to the next level, as opposed to like something will rub and then they'll be like, you gotta, you know, it's like, no, that's not it. And then but they just didn't know that it was only this one thing.
Right.
So that if I can figure it out on my own and then just show that to them and then it works, great. But if you only have so many times to go back and be like, no, this is really right. We just need to massage it. You can only say that so many times.
Yeah.
You know?
Has that ever happened then? Has something ever just got so stuck and it's just like, I think we need to just step back from this because we're going around in circles here.
Yeah. Yeah, that happens, but you know.
Luckily not too much.
Yeah, and again, if you figure out that material that you can kind of that you can make variations of and that you can sculpt in different ways, then you can, a lot of times you can just sort of massage things again and then figure. Once you the main thing is to figure out what's wrong. You know, like why is it rubbing them? You know. Once you figure that out, then, you know.
Yeah.
So I guess a lot of it boils down to like yourself being a good communicator and also being able to like understand people. If they're not able to articulate what they're trying to put across, you have to almost like.
You got to figure out a way to not pull it out of them, but like coax it out of them.
Yeah.
And then.
Without irritating them and then making them like dislike the whole process.
or feel self-conscious.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah, you're totally like a therapist.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I was just thinking that's the psychoanalytic sort of side of it. It's like,
Well, it is like that because it's vulnerable, right? And you're dealing with people's art, and you're also, you know, it's a unique thing within like, you know, as a mix engineer, it's sort of like you're doing a service, right? It's artistic, but to a certain extent, we're here to make their art sound the best it can. What you're doing is someone's art and your art and having to combine it. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like there's so many things that could go wrong in that and like upset or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Because art is emotion at the end of the day. So
and then there's a sense of creation, like they created this or it's their baby. You know what I mean? So you gotta, you
have to respect that.
Yeah, and again, I like the more you treat it as a collaboration, and then wanting to be a productive part of that collaboration and that end product, the end result. You know, then I think then you'll figure out, you know, how to do something creative or whatever.
Yeah.
How did you get how did you start in the industry? Like, what was your journey?
Well, I grew up playing music and I played all different types of music. So I, you know, played in bands and I studied classically and I played jazz.
Did you come from a musical family?
My parents weren't musicians, but my dad's dad was a trumpet player and my mom's I think her father played piano and her grandmother was a singer or something like that. So it was like
generation.
Yeah, it was like around. They valued it, but they didn't know about it,
Right.
which was probably, I don't know, it might have been a good thing because one of my kids is a musician, and I'm sure he doesn't like it. And my wife and I are both musicians, so sometimes he likes it, and sometimes he hates having parents who are musicians.
Right. Okay.
What does your son do?
He's a very good trumpet player, and he's into like making beats and stuff like that.
Okay.
So yeah. But yeah, so I liked all different types of music, and then I went to Rutgers University in New Jersey. I went to the School of the Arts there, which had a very good classical program and a very good jazz program there, and a lot of really big names there, and they also, because it was a School of the Arts, they had a really good dance department there, and they had a really good theater department.
Okay.
And so we started doing collaborative projects between the different disciplines.
Okay.
So
So
you're making the music for the theatre.
yeah, so it was like you just do things with different people.
Yeah, brilliant.
And then I started, just seeing different ways that music could function or
not just a
do
song.
other things.
Yeah.
And then I initially went there in the jazz program, but then I also started studying composition there, and I started really liking that. And I got a lot of encouragement from teachers. And yeah, so when I finished up school, it just so happens that a friend who I went to school with, he was not a musician. He had a family friend who owned a music house in the city, in Madison Square. And they did a lot of like national jingles and stuff. Like things that were playing like at the Super Bowl and like big things. And that guy also worked a lot with Alvin Ailey. And so he wrote a lot of ballets for Alvin Ailey, and just really interesting. He was like doing, commercial stuff that paid the bills, and then he was doing really artistic stuff. So I got a job there, and I worked there for a couple of years, and it was great. What was great about that was from the start to the finish of a project was usually really, really quick. So you got to see how it started and what the owner's, what his like approach was to just starting from nothing or some kind of a brief and then doing this thing. And then we would, program things or whatever needed to be done, and then bring musicians in and then mix it and then have a meeting with the clients and then adjust things and whatever.
Like all sides of the industry.
Yeah. So. And you would see that like over and over and over again.
This is the jingles.
Yeah, but you would see it start to finish in like sometimes in a few days.
Wow.
And so I just got really good experience at seeing those different parts of the process. Yeah. And then there's a guy named Rick Kerr who was the engineer that worked there, and he'd worked with like Elton John, Stevie Wonder, and like Michael Brecker, like all kinds of great people. And he was really good about when things slowed down a little bit and say we were running things off or whatever, he would explain to me what his process was.
Oh, cool.
And I that was like super helpful for me to just at least like nowadays I don't mix a lot of my own stuff, but I'm able to communicate with whoever's mixing because of that experience,
Do you have like a go-to like mixer that you like to work with? Like
a friend of mine in the space where I'm at, we built a space together, Matt Rocker, we work together a lot. And yeah, so just that was a great thing for me for the jingles. And then I started putting flyers up around town at all the film schools. This is back before 9/11. So you could just walk into any college.
Right,
Just
okay.
like, you know.
It's put loads of
Security
posters
was-
everywhere.
Yeah. So and then I started scoring student films, and I was doing that at night and met people. And then I found out that the different organizations around town for independent filmmaking, and so I just started meeting filmmakers, and and then I got a job. I worked had a family friend who was a documentary filmmaker who was also a composer.
Okay.
And, I mean, they've won Emmys for the films that they've made, but he's a good composer. I mean, he went to Berkeley as a composer.
Yeah.
And, so I worked with him for a bit during that time and just got to see how he was doing it.
So he was making the documentaries or scoring the documentaries?
He and his
or
wife.
both?
So his wife was a producer,
Right.
and he kind of wrote the stuff.
Yeah.
And then, they were co-directed, and then he would write the score.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom
Oh, wow.
Wagner. Yeah.
Okay.
And super nice guy, very supportive. And then my roommate, I was living in Queens at the time, and my roommate he was doing grad school at Queens College in the music program there at the Aaron Copland School. And one of his friends came over one day, and it turned out he started talking to me about, I was working on a film or something. He's like, oh, you know this program? And then it turned out to be Michael Tremonti, who was Howard Shore's assistant.
Yeah.
And they needed people up there. So I started working up there, and I ended up working there for about 4 years.
Is it the Howard's place?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And then, so that was, Lord of the Rings and Gangs of
yeah.
New York and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Gangs of New York. I love that film.
And actually, talking about the spotting thing before, that was the first time that we got to see all the spotting sessions and everything. And then I remember one time, I think it was David Cronenberg's film Spider. They had done so many films together. There was no spotting session.
Well, yes. Howard and David
Yeah, they just
Cronenberg.
picked up the phone and talked to each other.
Yeah.
And then one day came when I was doing, I can't remember which film I was doing, but it was somebody I'd worked with a lot. And then it was, no spotting session.
Same thing
just
happened.
talking over the phone and sending quick times back and forth.
Yeah.
So was this the introduction to major film projects for you?
Yes. Yeah.
So what was the first major movie you worked on?
I did the music copying on the score. So that's a Howard film. So that was the first project I did with him, but that was before I went up there full time. And then we finished that.
Yeah.
And then I went up there full time.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that was De Niro and Brando and Ed Norton.
Wow.
I remember. I do remember the film. Yeah. So I guess that was.
We recorded that in Manhattan Center here in town.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then so that's. I guess that's. That was the first experience of or being in that world of the frantic, crazy world of being in that film composing for it's quite full on, right? And
yeah.
It's,
right. So
I guess you learned
a lot
a
more
lot.
music than jingles.
I guess you learned a lot in those 4 years,
Yeah. Yes, I did. I learned a ton, and then I was still scoring, little films
doing
myself.
things on the side.
Yeah,
Nice. Yeah. When you found time.
Yeah. Every once in a while there'd be a little break, or things just wouldn't be as crazy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it'd be 9 months straight of.
Well, I was just thinking of Lord of the Rings, right? I remember you having just no time ever.
Oh,
You
yeah.
were just full on.
Oh yeah, that was crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was crazy. Yeah.
What's the major? Is there any kind of process that's different when it comes to approaching a blockbuster to an independent movie?
There tends to be less people involved on the smaller films, which
That's a good thing,
which
isn't
is
it?
a good thing.
Okay.
And you, if somebody has misgivings, shall we say, they're gonna hang on to them less. I think when the budget is a bit smaller.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
So they're willing to take more risks. And
Do you feel like you can get more like creative freedom with an independent?
It's funny that that depends on two things. It's obviously with the bigger budgets, there's more eyes on you and all that kind of stuff. But if you have a really strong filmmaker who people aren't pressuring or knows how to deal with that kind of pressure and is good about insulating people or being a buffer, then that gives you a lot more freedom. And so, the filmmakers who go to the powers that be and say, no, look, if you don't like something, come to me and I'll tell my people how to deal with it. Because the worst thing is when you start getting feedback from all these different places and then person A is like, turn left, and person B is like, no, turn right. And you're like, well, what am I supposed to do?
Both.
Yeah. So which one is it? So it's really great to have that filtered through, and then you don't want to do something that the director doesn't want to do. So, ultimately they have to sign off on like whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I really try to just be like, hey, like I work for this person.
Yeah.
That person works for you. You go talk to them.
Yeah.
When you can do that.
Yeah. What was the transition from going from I guess a film composer's assistant to being a composer? What was that leap like?
Yeah, so it's kind of like having your foot in one door and another door at the same time. And over time, the hardest thing is to find filmmakers and then establish a relationship with them. And especially when you're young, trying to build a body of work when you do that is also difficult. And so that's why I was trying to go and do student films. Like I kept trying to do that and just going out there and meeting people and then hoping that some of those people just, odds. Some of those people hopefully were going to go on to do some other things. And
makes complete sense.
For me, what happened was I met Larry Fessenden, who's a New York filmmaker, and he knew like a ton of people, both established filmmakers, and then he was really, really good about mentoring younger filmmakers coming up. So I ended up scoring like a ton of films for them, and that was kind of like going to grad school,
Okay.
And then at the same time, it was building a body of work for myself and figuring out. Paul Brusac actually had really good.
Yeah.
He had really good advice to me. I'd scored a few films, and then I just asked him for his opinion, and he was really supportive. And he said, you're doing absolutely the right thing, and what you don't want to do is you don't want to go and try to be John Williams or Howard Shore because you're young, and you haven't really established yourself yet, and there's already 50 people waiting in the wings to go that have a million credits. Then that so there's already people that are going to do that. So instead, what you should do is you should learn how to be creative within the budgets that you can reasonably get. And then when you start to do that, people will take notice. And he was absolutely right. I tried to go and if I was able to go and make the films that I was doing feel a lot more expensive than they really were, then that's probably a good thing.
How would you? How did you go about trying to define yourself and have like a unique sound? Then, like obviously, because it's would be so easy just to like sound like John Williams, or do you know what I mean? Like, what would you?
Yeah.
How would you go about doing that?
Well, 20 years ago, the virtual instruments were definitely there and around, but they weren't what they are today.
Mm.
So you had to, it was good to be able to figure out what the technology did well, and then figure out what it didn't do well, and then do some kind of combination between acoustic stuff and the virtual instruments, or be like super creative with the electronic stuff and just kind of think outside the box, turn it on its head, that kind of stuff. Or like just finding interesting combinations of different things to try to put together to come up with different sounds. But for me, because I did study composition and then had access to musicians, for a while I did what I call the poor man's orchestra, where I would write a score like I would if I had a big budget, but then just through like overdubbing and tricks in the studio,
layering.
I remember you saying you like to layer things up with
and then figured out how to like
augment
mic
things.
placement and using different mics and things like that, and figuring out how to go and make it sound like it was a big orchestra, but do it within the budgets that we could that we could get away with. And then I also figured out that when I was doing a project, I didn't want to go and just do it to satisfy the whatever project I was actually doing at the time, but I also wanted to say, it's like, what film did I want to be scoring? And then it should sound like it belonged in that quality of movie.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
So first couple films I did, I mean, I put all the money into like getting good recording and good mixing done, and and but then it's easier to show people like, I can handle this thing. It was like, well, you haven't done projects like that. Otherwise, you're going to just if people just keep you to what you've already done, you're never going to advance, right?
Got it. Yeah.
So you have to convince them, I can handle that.
Yeah.
And so it occurred to me that it was like, I can't stop with just like, okay, that's good enough. It's got to be like, I want to be doing that film. So it's got to drop into those kind of like, if somebody tempt with my music, it needs to work.
Do you have like a particular genre that you like working in the most?
I've done a lot of horror stuff and a lot of thriller things, but they tend to be more emotional or dramatic. And just for me personally, I find that I do like the darker stuff, but it's much more interesting when there's like a human element to it, like torture porn and that kind of stuff. That's not my thing. I mean, maybe for a burst here or there, it's fine. But it's much more interesting when you care about the characters.
Right.
So
if it comes from maybe like something like The Lord of the Rings, that you might already be like familiar with the story and the tone, is that something that you can sink your teeth into more and be like, I can connect to this?
Yeah, or anything that has a narrative where you get to know the characters and you care for the characters.
Yeah. Well, I think, because it's funny you said you do quite a lot of horror. I mean,
I did more when I was starting out, because that's what was offered to me. Although I did grow up. I had a friend who his dad had one of those like video vending machine companies.
A video vending machine.
Yeah,
company.
like in the 80s.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so you could go. It was like Redbox. Well, we used to have Redbox where you could rent DVDs, but
Okay.
But this was VHS. This is like forever ago.
Yeah.
And yeah, you could rent a VHS like in a vending machine.
Amazing.
Yeah. And
I wish
so
they still- I wish
so
they were still around.
How did you return it? Like,
So-
just back to the vending machine.
Yeah. Well, we just went down to my friend's basement because everything was, they had all this stock down in his basement.
Okay.
So
Oh,
we
right.
would just watch all these. They had all these movies, and many of them were, not A-list movies.
Yeah, like fun, kind
Yeah.
of low budget,
Yeah.
creative movies.
So that I ended up seeing a lot of those movies, and I mean they definitely had a place in my heart,
Okay,
But I mean, things that left an imprint on me when I saw them in the theater, it was really, or even seeing some stuff on TV. I remember seeing The Shining on
Mm-hmm.
TV as a kid
Mm-hmm.
and just being like totally blown away, you know?
Yeah.
And, but that just really, really left a mark,
Yeah.
And so,
I don't think anyone
Yeah.
truly forgets the first time they saw The Shining.
No.
It's something that stays with you. Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
So working on like horror, is it like the tension that you like to build
Yes.
within the music?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And then, I mean, where else would you get to use like all the crazy
Yeah.
aleatoric
Mhm.
orchestral techniques?
detuned strings
Yeah.
and stuff. Right.
Yeah. So, like all that stuff's super fun.
Mm.
Yeah.
And then just finding out different combinations of things you can use to do that.
I guess because the whole point of horror is to make someone feel uncomfortable. So, like, the music itself has to be very unique. Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're doing sort of like a rom-com or a hero film, it's like, okay, we're keeping this, like, happy, powerful sort of thing. But, like, horror, you want to feel disturbed. So the music has to feel alien as well. So you can be, like, really creative with it.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying before, if my job is to go and bring the audience into the world of the film, then you've got different things at your disposal when you're doing something that's dark,
Mm.
and there's a wider, you have like sort of a wider berth of things to try out.
Mhm.
I think.
Mhm. Yeah.
The dynamics changes quite a lot as well, like especially with like jump scares and things. It'd
Yeah.
be like a single string, and then suddenly it's like bang, everything comes in, like to like thrill you into it.
Yeah, and I did a film called The House of the Devil, and the director was like, he's like, well, it's called The House of the Devil. Like the audience knows that something's going to happen.
Yeah,
The trick is keeping them on the edge of the seat and making them wonder, well, when is it going to happen?
Yeah, yeah. Is
Yes.
it now?
And
Is it now?
so he's keeping the whole thing of the film is like keeping up with this building tension, and then release, like you think something's going to happen, then it doesn't
Yeah,
happen.
that's-
And then finally all hell breaks
It
loose.
all
You, end
kicks
up,
off.
you leave the theatre feeling exhausted.
Yes.
Yeah, I think House of the Devil, I think, was a great example of that character-driven kind of horror film you're referring to.
Yes.
right?
I don't think
And
I've
Yeah.
watched
it's
it.
brilliant. It's so I love that film, and it's it kept on building and building and building. I was just like, it was almost like we were watching a DJ. It's like when's the drop
the
gonna
drop.
happen?
Yeah.
You know,
Drop.
Right.
when's it gonna happen? And when it does, I think that's very cool.
Then
film.
So he wants to stay one step ahead of the audience, because he's like he was like, audiences bad. Like, I don't know when we did that, like 2010 or something like that.
Yeah.
And then 2009. It's like, audiences are sophisticated, and they always want to try to be one step ahead of you. So we have to stay
I
one
know
step
what's
ahead of them.
happening.
Yeah. But that was a fun project where, he knew that he wanted to have some kind of piano thing,
Mhm.
but he he didn't know any more than that. He just and he wanted it to have like an 80s, late 70s vibe.
Yeah.
And so I started playing with like detuned piano stuff and then also prepared piano stuff. And at first I was just like, oh, let me try with some prepared piano stuff. And then I thought, well, it's kind of, that's like very, it is what it is kind of thing. And some of it doesn't like it mutilates things so much that there's not that much pitch there. So then I thought, well, what if I layer it with a regular piano? And then, so I tried that and I was like, oh, that sounds pretty cool, but it's like a little, they're too far apart. So then I started playing with alternate tunings. You know, that's the great thing about like the sampled stuff.
Yeah. You do
so
want pretty
easily
much.
you could go and just change the temperament.
Yeah.
Right? So you just changed the tuning on the relationship between the notes.
Yeah, rather than opening up the piano and doing it.
Well, then I could just experiment because you don't want to have to like, let's do the Pythagorean method.
Okay.
No, that doesn't sound good. No, let's retune it to the
turning dials.
Yeah, so, but then I found a cool thing that worked and that layered in well and just made for an interesting sort of off-kilter sound.
I thought the opening cue was great. It definitely reminded me of that 80s kind of John Carpenter-esque sort of vibe.
Oh, the synth thing?
Yeah, the synth one. Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, that I didn't do that. That was a friend of the director's, which is an obvious homage to We Shall Not Yeah. So but it was the opening piano thing when the house goes in. That's that layered piano thing.
Is that when you kind of went back to your youth, back to the video vending machine time, and did like some of the scores on those films were very, you know, those 80s horror films, it was like low budget, so it's very synth driven, and it's got a certain vibe to it, a certain sound to it.
That's how I saw like Evil Dead and all those kinds of, and which actually was a reference for the first film I did. The director for House of Devils, Ty West.
Yes.
And so the first film that we did together was a film called The Roost, which was like vampire bats. That just go and kill everybody. And
it's great elevator pitch for a film. Yeah.
And but he was like, yeah, you know, kind of like the synth vibe of Evil Dead, like that could be one element. And then I thought, well, you know, they had like a little bit of money, but really not very much money. So I thought, well, maybe I'll do like a really aggressive string quartet and with some percussion. Yeah. And so it was like, you know, like Ligeti, Penderecki, Chelsea style string quartet stuff. And so I played some concert music for him and he was like, oh yeah, that's great. And then some friends of mine have a quartet called the Flux Quartet, and they're great musicians. And they play around a lot, but they're fantastic musicians. So it ended up being this like really aggressive, avant-garde string quartet stuff. But some of it was like almost heavy metal, kind of like really rhythmic. Like you can just hear the bow like scraping against the strings, and it's great.
Nice.
But that was like the video vending machine definitely came in.
Yeah. The video nasty reference. Yeah.
Has there been like a standout score or movie that you look back on and be like, oh, that's I like, you know, Pride and Place, On the Counter sort of thing?
No, I mean, I like once something's over, I'm like, okay, what's next?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. But they're all like I do agree with that thing. Like your creative creations are like your kids, you know. It's like they're they each have an existence of their own, and they kind of like live on their own after you finish.
So it would be very unusual to go back and reference your previous work, for example. Would that not be a thing?
Well, people use temp music so much.
Right.
But it can be tricky sometimes when people temp with your own music. If you're doing a show,
when you say temp,
like so when they're editing and when they're screening in early stages of a film or a show or a TV show, they'll cut in existing music.
Oh, okay. Like using a reference.
And it's and it helps them to figure out like, oh, this kind of thing is working.
And the energy.
This kind of thing doesn't work. And then also the editors tend to more and more, they're kind of like, they used to just cut and then they would just cut based on the film. And now they're kind of like, some of them try out music while they're going. And
okay. These are the picture editors or the music
editors.
Okay, yeah.
And so some people...
they like to maybe cut to the music rather than...
Sometimes, yeah. And, it's tricky because you don't want people to get attached to that kind of stuff, especially if, your job is to get that out of there and replace it, right?
There's a lot of famous examples out there where their directors are so attached to it that they just carry on using it.
Oh, when I worked for Howard, I remember the first spotting session that he did, like the first thing he did was grab the faders and turn them down. And I totally get it. Like you just don't want to...
Oh, you don't even want to be influenced by it, sort of thing.
You just want to get people away from that as quickly as possible. And I will say, some of the most creative stuff that I've done has been things that weren't temped or the temp wasn't given to me.
Right. Okay.
And
like a complete blank canvas sort of thing, yeah.
Which is really, it is tough to watch when you have to have you have to know what that looks like and you have to be able to see the potential and not get scared away by just how bare it is. But it does lead to really creative decisions, And I think that you can come up with some great creative solutions that you might not come up with otherwise. That said, sometimes people temp really well and they're more broad about it, as opposed to being like, oh, the temp has to work like every cut and that's like
over the top.
Yeah,
that
can be really a pain because people then can get.
Well, you almost have to then totally recreate what they've done. There's no limit. They've limited.
Yeah, or just try to just shut it off and hope for the best.
And not hopefully you don't get recalled
I will watch it because there's a reason why they put it in there, and especially if they, again, it's like as a communication tool, you can see what they're responding to and what they like. But you also have to you gotta know when to walk away.
Yeah, sounds like a double-edged sword.
Yeah, well, you run the risk of like, well, I like the temp better, So,
can I have the temp, please?
Oh, God.
But no, it's the more a composer can go and like jump onto those things of, especially like what themes can do and unifying the score and all that kind of stuff. Like the more that you can establish that and you can start to show that to the filmmaker, then the more they're going to leave stuff in the rear view as far as temp goes, because that's one of the best things that creating a score can do for a project is like unifying all these different things and contouring, like sculpting right to whatever it is that they're doing. And then finding like, oh, I can use this thing here, and if I can bring it back over here. So what changes do I need to make to bring it back? And I want to bring it back. Like if I'm working and if I'm trying to do a theme and there is picture, a lot of times I'll figure out, all right, I think I want to have it come back in these different places, or like, here are potential places I want to have it come back. So I might be looking at 5 different scenes at one time to go and write that theme.
So they all work together.
So that they have the potential of working together.
Makes sense, yeah.
And then a lot of times with the opening titles and the end titles, I'll save those for last because I'm going, the opening titles, you're setting up what's going to come. And with the end titles, it's a director friend of mine, he calls it the composer's victory lap. so, which is
chance
awesome.
to really go for it.
So if you can go and like the scene leading into the end titles, you kind of like wrap up. It's like where the film's being wrapped up, you wrap up all the musical devices and then you do your composer's victory lap in the titles. Like just really wraps everything together. It's really cool. But you need to know what you're playing with and what the journey's been at that point in order to be able to do that.
Yeah. Do you see the music as like another character in the film almost?
It can be, yeah. And I don't. Sometimes you need to be really literal about like, this theme is for this person and this thing. And then sometimes it's a little more abstract or a little more open-ended where it's like there's a general feeling that needs to happen or that starts to happen as you work. And so then you're kind of like just playing with that feeling and leaving that impression on the audience. It's, the film and the score need to evoke something. So you just kind of like figure out what that is or what it can be,
Yeah.
And sometimes being more literal with things like characters or story points can help with that. And sometimes you start to become, the score makes itself known too much. And that's where it's like, you gotta find that, balance.
Yeah.
It's like, it's the same thing with when score comes in and when score goes out. Sometimes I was doing one film one time and there was a lot of space in the film, the Kelly Reichardt film, Meek's Cutoff. And she has like great visuals and camera movements and things like that. And her films are very, very deliberate. There's a lot of space in the films. And
when you say space, what do you mean?
Slow camera movements, things where you're watching the character, but no one's talking, and you're just kind of observing things.
Right.
And you both the audience and the people in the film are probably they're like in their head.
Own thoughts, yeah.
Yeah. And so we were working on it, and there are big gaps where there's no music in the film. And at one point, the score came back in, and even though it was like really, really light score, it just felt like you were being hit over the head with a hammer. And then I figured out, like, after I watched it a few times, and I was like, why does that? And that's the kind of thing where you need to watch it, like, you need to experience what it's like watching it from the beginning all the way up to then. Like, sometimes you can't just watch things in little isolated chunks. Sometimes you have to watch it and get that sense of like the whole thread of everything. And so I went back and watched it a few times, and then I realized there's too much of a gap between these two pieces of music. And so I went back and I tried to find something where I could come in really subtly and you wouldn't even really notice it. Yeah. But it just took the edge off of when we really wanted the score to come in.
Yes. Yeah.
And that totally did it. It was, you had to find the right balancing act, but that was a really interesting lesson about where to come in, how to come in, where to go out, how to go out. how much time, like
Mm-hmm.
your sense of the audience's experience of the film based on what is or isn't going on in the score.
It's, I mean, just the score in any film is such a powerful element of what's going on and what the audience is feeling or not feeling. It can't be underestimated. It's just
and I find the most effective communication with filmmakers, especially if they're not musicians, is just talking about it that way, like talking about the story, talking about the characters, the emotion, and what the and then sometimes the technical aspects of filmmaking, but depends on who the filmmaker is. But
I'll never forget. There's a thing online where you can watch that final scene in the first Star Wars film where they're being awarded the medals and there's a big ceremony.
Oh, and they get rid of the music.
And they get rid of the music, and it's like it's the most awkward thing because they're just walking up
the squeaking.
It's just like we need music.
The lip smacking and like the chain is funny.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
I love those things. There's loads of those things. One last question, because I think we're running over now, but if you could give some advice to maybe the young composers or any composer that's trying to like make their way into the industry, what advice would you give them in terms of like trying to start their journey?
Try to get out there and meet people. Like that's a huge part of the personal aspect, and like just the connections is like that's like one camp of being a composer. And then there's the art and the craft of it, and that part you can work on by yourself, but the others it's a little bit of luck, but you also kind of make your own luck. So
be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, you like, if you want to be doing something, try to be around it. And so, I used to go around town to the different filmmakers things, and I used to just try to meet filmmakers that way.
Yeah.
And same thing with the film schools. I mean, like I said, it was different back then.
Yeah, you can't walk into a university now and just start slapping.
Yeah, but they have like they have things like the Sundance Lab. ASCAP has a program.
Well, and social media as well. Like,
I was just thinking like Meetup. Even there's Meetup groups that for composing, for filmmaking,
and there'll be like a thread of like independent films that people post, and then just find out who directed them. Maybe.
Yeah, I think don't be too precious with stuff, and try to get out there and like try to find interesting things and get a little bit of a nose for what is interesting and what's not, but also you want to be doing things, so try not to say no to things. Like don't say yes to the wrong things, but don't say yes to things that are going to suck up all your time.
Or like detriment your career, maybe.
Yeah. But there's if I were to do it different, if I were to go back in time and do it again, I probably would have just sort of thrown myself out there a little bit more and do it not in a pushy way, but just be like, hey, I'm
a composer.
I'm here to collaborate or whatever, or just be interested, just even be interested in what other people doing. And like maybe they don't hire you, but just know, and like you meet people and just by being around people and just be like a decent person and someone that's fun to hang out with or whatever. Yeah. And then the next thing you know, it's, you'll meet somebody, this person, that person, whatever.
Yeah,
and
snowballs.
Then, but if you're not around it, I mean, then you're needle in a haystack on YouTube. You know what I mean?
Of course.
Yes,
Well, it's such a big place, the internet. It's easy to get lost. Never heard. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Talking to you and getting an insight into it.